By the end of this video, you will learn how to convert the Figma card component to HTML CSS component. We will also learn how to make the cards responsive from Figma to HTML and CSS in 8 easy steps. Step 1. So we're going to tackle the card, which is the last part of our Notion website. Here, if I click the card, on the right hand side we see the properties, which is the text properties. The text properties are not really useful for us because what we care about is basically the color and the padding of our card. They are identical and they are getting repeated every single time. The only difference is for the get started we are using another link. We already created the link component. So what we can do is basically click on the main component and take a look at the card, and as you can see it's only one single component, which means that we don't need to create multiple different variations. So what we have to do first is click on the card, and as you can see it is rounded with 24 pixels of padding across. So if I scroll down here, I have the CSS properties generated for me, also with the correct colors and the border radius. So what I need to do is basically copy this, visit Visual Studio Code, and here what we need to do is basically create a card. We can basically give it a class of card and then press tab, and for now we would just place some lorem content by pressing tab, and then we need to visit CSS. Also on the CSS side we would just add a comment and add our card here. Here we would select the card and open the curly braces and Command and V to paste the style. So if we go ahead and save this, we no longer need the width, but for now we would just keep it just to see it on the browser side. And here right now we see it on the browser. If I go ahead and take a look at this, our card is created, but it doesn't have any background color. So what we can do is basically visit Figma and now copy the background color and the border radius. By doing that, I would basically also add these here and save this, and I would go ahead and visit the browser, and as you can see the card is correct and the styling is linked properly. Also what I did was imported the images. So if I click on my images here, I have all these business, enterprise, free and plus images exported. So I already went ahead in Figma and exported these and already imported them in Visual Studio Code. So inside our card, the other step that we need to now tackle is the top, step 2. And then here if I click on the top auto layout, what I do notice is here we have, again, inside the master pattern card, we have a layer called top, and the layer top also, if I open it, it has the icon, which is the image, and 2 text layers. So let's just go ahead and do that. Let's click on the top and let's just go ahead and copy the CSS styles, and inside the HTML what I would do is basically select the card and then open a new line and then just write card dash top, which is basically the top layer of the card. And then here, once I have this, I would go to CSS and now select basically card dash top inside the card top and then paste the CSS styles here. What you can do is, if you don't want to nest your elements like that, we can simply cut that and then just place it outside because this is already its class by its own. Also, we don't need the align self stretch because this is a default value. And if you go ahead and save this, nothing is going to happen because we haven't added anything to the card top. So the first thing that we need to add is the image. So here we'll just add img and the /, go to the img folder and add the free plan. So here we just write free plan, save this. Also, to make it easier, we can copy the comment and add the card section here, card pricing. Also, there's another HTML element, so you can turn this div to article if you want to make it look different, or main, it really doesn't matter. It's not going to have any effect. So right now, once we save this, we can go ahead and visit the browser, and now we see the image which is added to the card. If I go ahead and visit Figma, what I do notice is the image here is set in a different size. So if I click on any of them and if I try to scroll down here, I see that all of them, the height is set to 40 pixels. So if I try to basically switch between different images, the height is set to 40 pixels. So what I can do is basically have the same approach that I had for the other images. Go to the card top, select the image and have the width set to auto, and then have the height set to 40 pixels. So if I go ahead and save this and visit the browser, now I see my image size is correct. Now I need to go ahead and visit Figma again and select the text value. Here we have our paragraph text, which is basically having the typography style generated on the right side. We only need the color and the weight because by default the font size is 14 pixels. So if I go ahead and copy this and visit CSS, if I search for the body, here we see that we have the font family added. And what I do notice is we don't have the font size added in the body. So that means we also need to add the font size if I scroll down all the way to the card top section, here we are going to add a paragraph, which is a p tag. And inside that paragraph, I'm going to Command and V to paste the styles. However, I don't need the inner because this one is already added to the body in HTML, as well as the font style and line height. I'm going to basically cut these and remove that from my HTML. And the other thing I need to do is basically go ahead on the HTML side, right underneath this, add a paragraph tag, and then just write free, which is the name of the plan. Now if I go ahead and visit the browser, I exactly see the image with the name of the plan, which is free. Step 3. And if I go ahead and visit Figma, the other text element that I need to add is the price. So what you can see is we have, again, similar styles in terms of color and font weight. The only difference is the font size, which is 32 pixels. So what I would do is copy this, go back and visit the HTML, and then here we have the paragraph, which is set to free. What we can do is give it a class, basically call this card plan, and duplicate this, and for the second one call this card price. This way, if I go ahead and save this and visit the CSS styles, so what I can do is now target them here, which is card plan, and then open the curly brace, and then move the font size of 14 pixels down, and then create another one, which is card price, and then basically paste the font size of 32 pixels. Also, these are CSS classes on their own, so what I can do is basically cut them outside. It's not going to have any effect because these are unique CSS classes. However, these are HTML elements that doesn't have any classes, so I do want to nest them inside the card top. And what you notice is I'm already grouping the paragraphs by selecting P, which means both of them are paragraphs. So the color and the font weight of 700 is going to be added to both of them. However, because the plan and price is different, we are uniquely setting the size of 14 pixels and 32 pixels using the CSS class. And then finally, I would just go ahead and update the values. So here I would go and visit the website and go select the actual card. We have $0 and then we have our sign up. So what I can do is basically copy the $0 and just go ahead and add it to our index.html just to go ahead and see how it looks. So far we managed to create the top header of the card inside our free card. Step 4. And if I go ahead and visit the Figma dev mode, if I collapse all the layers, if I also scroll down, here we managed to create the top, so we're done with the top. And now if I click on the link, we already have the component created. So what I need to do is basically go ahead and visit the navigation section and open it. Here I do have a link, so I'm just going to simply copy it and go ahead and paste that right underneath the card top. So here I'm going to paste the link, change the value to sign up, and change the class to white because it's no longer off-white. So once I save this and go ahead and visit the browser, I managed to add the link properly. What you notice is the link is not 100% across. So what I can do is basically target the card, which is the parent card, and select the anchor, which is the link. So this way I'm going to make the width 100%. So here if I scroll up to the card, I have the link. So here I would just select the link inside the card. If I select the link outside, that means it's going to select all the links. If I go ahead and visit the browser, it's going to select all the links at the top, and I don't want to target those, and I only want to target basically the links inside the card. So that's why I'm nesting the .link class inside the card, and I only need to give it a width of 100%. And if I go ahead and save this and visit the browser, I now managed to create the sign up link. Step 5. And then finally, I need to add the bullets. So if I go ahead and select the bullets, I exactly see them having the similar styles. The only difference is the font weight of 400 and the line height of 22 pixels. So what I would do is I would copy this and go ahead and visit the HTML in the VS Code, and right underneath the sign up, in order for me to create a bullet, I just need to add an unordered list with li, which is an ordered list, and let's just add a lorem 1 for now, and let's just go ahead and duplicate that multiple times. If we go ahead and see it, we now see the bullets added. Now the only difference is we need to target the bullets and have them the same CSS styles as the card plan. So what I can do is basically select all of them and add a class of card-bullet and save this. And by doing that, I now can go to the CSS styles and scroll down. Here underneath the card plan and card price, I would just write card bullet and open the curly brace, paste it. Here I have font weight of 400 with a line height of 22 pixels. However, what I do notice is the other texts have a font weight of 700, so I can't really group the bullet with it. However, what I can do is copy the color and add it to the bullet here. So we're happy with this. Now if I go ahead and visit the browser, we might not see the difference that much, but we have successfully created this using the identical stylings that we had on the Figma side. So what I would do is remove the dummy text and duplicate this 4 times. So let's just go ahead on the index.html, remove the lorem, and then collapse the cards. So here, before I collapse this, if I want to break it down, we have our card, which has the card top, as well as an unordered list with the bullets and the link in the middle. And what I need to do is basically cut this entire card, repeat it 4 times, and wrap it inside a grid. Step 6. So if I go ahead and take a look at the Figma and try to zoom out, here you see that we have the 4 cards. And if I click on any of them, we have the section. And then if I take a look at the right side, the section has the CSS styling. For now, I'm going to copy this. However, we are going to make some modification and use modern CSS grid to achieve the responsive behavior. However, for now, I'm going to copy this right here, add another section and call this card-grid, add a tab and make sure I have it consistent as section, which is consistent to the HTML tags up top. And then go ahead under the CSS all the way to the top right here, add card-grid, and then let's just go ahead and paste the CSS styles there. And then finally, I would go to the HTML, cut the card, which is a single card, and inside the section, which is the card grid, I'm going to copy paste it 4 times. So here I would add a comment, and then I would just add number 1, which is this is the first card, or you can basically call this free plan, and then basically paste this, and then here we can collapse this and add our plus plan, and right underneath that we would paste that one. For now we would just change the name to plus. We would update the values later on and then repeat that 2 times. And then here we added the business plan and then finally the enterprise plan, and then we would just update the enterprise title. So if I try to break this down, we have the card grid, which is the section, and inside that we have 4 articles, and each article, if I try to open it, has a top section, and the top section has 1 image and 2 paragraphs, which is the name of the plan and the price. And if I try to collapse that, I have the link, which is sign up, and it's going to change between different plans. And then finally an unordered list with bullets. And this gets repeated 4 times for the 4 plans inside the card grid. And then we finally copied the CSS styling of the card grid from our Figma all the way to the CSS. And now if we go ahead and visit it, right now we see exactly our cards being displayed correctly. However, the sizing is off, and if I try to also resize this, they would actually collapse and move to the next line. However, they are not that responsive. Also, we only managed to update the title, so I'm going to fast forward and update the images and also update the bullets. And if I do want to update, for example, the plus, if I go ahead and visit the plus plan, all I have to do is basically update the path to plus and then update the price to $10. And then here just change the alt tag to plus. Also the plus plan has the get started, so here I would just change this to get started, and the link is black, so we are using a black one. And now if I go ahead and visit it, here you see the plus image is different than the free. We updated the price and we switched the link to black. So I'll repeat the same process, fast forward and update the other values. Step 7. So I fast forwarded and I have updated the content. If I go ahead and visit Figma, just to do a quick recap, we went ahead and selected the card and we visited the main component. We added our card, which was consist of the top, the link, and the actual bullets. And if I go ahead and click on the instance, here each of the cards have different images with different plans. However, they have the similar look and feel. And in terms of the content, if I go ahead and visit the Visual Studio Code, if I open my card grid, and if I open one of them, for example, the free plan, here you see the article has the div called card top. And if I go ahead and visit the Figma, here you see we have our section, which is the grid, and we have the card, which is consists of top, link, and the bullet on the left hand side. And then if I go ahead and visit Visual Studio Code, we have our card, which is consists of card top. Inside the card top, we have the image, and this is how we update the path of the image. We have our plan and our pricing, which is nested inside the top card alongside the image. And if I collapse this, it is followed by the link. And after that, if I open the UL, which is the bullets, each LI is containing 1 single bullet. So we have repeated this multiple times. And if I go ahead and visit Figma, this is how we are translating the Figma bullets into HTML bullets using UL and LI, which stands for unordered list and list. And then finally, if I go ahead and visit this in the browser, here you notice that we have exactly everything that we needed. The images are updated, the plans are updated alongside the bullets, the actual cards are center aligned. However, in terms of the sizing, the height of them are not correct, and also the width of them is not correct as well. However, if I try to make this smaller, they are responsive, which is good. The only downside is they are very small. So we have to give them a minimum value. So if I go ahead and visit Figma Dev Mode, if I click on this, and if I try to scroll down, here we are giving it a minimum value of 290 pixels to each individual cards. So what I can do on the CSS side is to add a grid instead of actually adding a flexbox. So what we need to do is basically change the display from flex to grid, and also now add grid template columns. And in grid template columns, instead of actually manually adding 290 pixels and then repeating that multiple times, here if I try to repeat that 4 times 290 pixels, what I can do is also basically try to comment that so they don't have an effect. Now if I go ahead and visit this, now we managed to see our CSS cards having 290 pixels. However, the actual cards inside our browser is not going all the way across. And if you remember, if I try to go back to CSS, we manually set the width and we said that we no longer need that. So what we can do is basically also remove align flex start, which is a default value, as well as the width 171 pixels. And if I go ahead and save that and now go ahead and visit the browser, now we see exactly our cards having the correct size and the bullets and everything are being displayed correctly. However, if I try to make them smaller, now we are running into an issue of not being responsive. Step 8. So what I can do is use a trick using CSS grid and actually align them and make them responsive. So if I go ahead and visit the CSS, here we no longer need any of these. So what I would do is basically uncomment that and only keep the gap, because the gap, we need the gap between our cards. And now let's just go ahead and remove all of these for now. And now if I go ahead and visit it, we see the gap is now fixed. However, they are not center aligned. So we need to add one more property that we just deleted, which is called justify content. And we have this as center. So if I go ahead and visit that, now we managed to center align them. Everything is perfect. The only issue is the responsive behavior, because on the CSS side, we have added all of them as 290 pixels and we repeated this 4 times because we have 4 cards. We can use something called the repeat function. So what I would do is basically cut that. We no longer need this and we add this as a value. So here, because we are using CSS grid, we can just use a repeat function, and repeat function accepts 2 arguments. So here we add a comma. This is the first argument and this is the second argument. So in the first argument, we can add a value called autofit. So here we would just go ahead and write autofit. And for the second argument, we have another function we can nest inside that, which is called min max. So here we have the min max. And as you can see, if we repeat this pattern inside the repeat function, we will be able to create automatic responsive grid. And again, min max also accepts 2 arguments. So here I would need to add a comma. Again, the first argument as well as the second argument. So the first argument that we need to add is basically the minimum. Here we have to add the minimum value, which is 290 pixels. And the second argument in CSS grid, what we can do is add a fractional value, which stands for FR. And we have to give it a unit. Here we would just give it 1 FR, which means take all the available space and make sure your minimum width is set to 290 pixels. Because on the Figma side, if I try to go to the design mode and try to zoom out, here you see on the Figma side, if I try to resize this, you see the cards are being resized, which is good. If I try to basically Command Z that, we want basically have the same behavior repeated here. So to break this down, we use the repeat function as the parent, which accepts 2 arguments. First one, which is the autofit, which tells the browser automatically fit the CSS cards. We add a comma and we add another function inside our repeat function, and the function is min max, which means add a minimum and maximum value. The minimum value, we are giving it a 290 pixel. The reason we're giving this 290 pixel, if we try to visit Figma and go to the dev mode, and here if we click on one of the cards, and if we try to scroll down, here we have the minimum value of 290 pixels. And now the other value, which is the maximum value, we tell that to grow using FR, and then we tell it to grow 1 time, not 2 times. Here you can add like 2 times or 1 time, but the default is making sure you add 1, which means grow 1 time. Now if I go ahead and save this and try to visit the browser, here you see we have the gap, which is correct. And now if I try to resize this, our card is being resized for us. And if I try to make it smaller, we are into 4 line. And then if I try to make it smaller, we are basically back to 1 line. So here from 1 column, we went to 2 column, to 3 column, and then to 4 columns. And then finally, what you notice is the gap on the right and left side is set to 0. So we have to basically add the property that we just deleted, which is padding of 96. If I click on my section here, if I scroll up, we had the padding before, so which is 0 and 96 pixels on the right and left. So we would copy that on our clipboard and go ahead and visit the grid card and add it right below the gap value, which is 24 pixels. Save this, and now let's just go ahead and visit the browser. Here we see that exactly we have the 96 pixels of spacing on the right and left side. All the cards have the same height, and if we try to make them smaller, they are wrapping to the next line. All of this is done using one CSS line, which is CSS grid. So if I go ahead and try to visit the CSS, we are using this, and this is a very powerful pattern to follow to create responsive grid. Figma at the moment doesn't have this feature. So if I go ahead and visit Figma, and if I click on my section, Figma tries to produce flexbox with the wrap, which is an older technology. So if you try to decide to exactly have the same responsive behavior, you can use the CSS grid to achieve that. And then finally, one minor touch. If I take a look at the bullets, they are basically all the way pushed to the left side, which means if I go ahead and visit the Figma, here you see that the bullets are pushed 24 pixels from the left side. They are aligned with the actual content. So what we need to do is basically go ahead inside the card, and here we had the link. So what we have to do is basically select the unordered list and add a padding left to it. And then here we can basically just give it 16 pixels for now. And let's just go ahead and visit the browser. Here we have added 16 pixels of padding left, and our bullets are exactly aligned. And we managed to create responsive grid from Figma to CSS and HTML. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more design tips and tutorials, and let me know what you think in the comments down below.